Spiritual warfare. God breaks chains of familial toxicity. You are free. There comes a moment in life when you begin to sense that the battle you are fighting did not start with you. You feel resistance where there should be peace. You feel guilt where there should be rest. You feel fear, obligation, and emotional confusion even when you are doing nothing wrong. And you start to wonder why love feels conditional, why silence feels dangerous, why your growth threatens people who are supposed to celebrate you. This is not coincidence. This is not weakness. This is not imagination. This is spiritual warfare, and for many people, the battlefield is not the outside world but the family system that raised them. Spiritual warfare rarely looks like chaos at first. Most of the time, it looks like normal. It looks like tradition. It looks like, this is just how our family is. It looks like loyalty demands that cost you your voice. It looks like respect that requires your silence. It looks like love that must be earned through obedience. And because it is familiar, you assume it is safe. But familiarity is not the same as health, and tradition is not the same as truth. One of the most surprising realities is that many people who feel spiritually stuck are not under attack because of what they are doing wrong, but because of what they are about to do right. Growth threatens systems built on control. Healing disrupts patterns that survived on dysfunction. Freedom exposes chains that were never meant to be seen. And when God begins to call someone out of generational toxicity, resistance almost always appears from the very place that claims to love them most. You may have noticed that the more you try to set healthy boundaries, the more guilt you are made to feel. The more you try to heal, the more you are accused of changing. The more you step into clarity, the more confusion seems to rise around you. This is not accidental. Toxic family systems often rely on emotional roles rather than healthy relationships. Someone is the peacemaker, someone is the scapegoat, someone is the golden child, someone is the silent sufferer. And when one person refuses to keep playing their assigned role, the entire system feels threatened. Spiritual warfare thrives in unspoken agreements. Agreements that say you must tolerate disrespect to keep peace. Agreements that say your needs are selfish. Agreements that say honoring your parents means abandoning yourself. But the truth is, God never designed honor to require self-destruction. He never designed love to demand silence in the face of harm. He never designed family to be a prison disguised as loyalty. Many people don't realize that generational trauma is not just psychological, it is spiritual. Patterns repeat not because people want them to, but because they were never confronted. Emotional manipulation becomes normalized. Control becomes confused with care. Shame becomes confused with discipline. And slowly, without realizing it, generations pass down fear, suppression, and unhealed wounds as if they were inheritance. But what was passed down does not have to be passed forward. One of the most liberating realizations is understanding that God often calls one person in a family to be the interrupter. Not the rebel, not the troublemaker, but the breaker of cycles. The one who sees clearly. The one who feels deeply. The one who refuses to pretend anymore. That person is often misunderstood, criticized, or isolated, not because they are wrong, but because they are different. And difference threatens dysfunction. Spiritual warfare intensifies when clarity increases. You start noticing patterns you once excused. You start hearing manipulation in conversations that once felt normal. You start feeling exhaustion after interactions that used to confuse you. This awareness is not betrayal. It is awakening. And awakening is dangerous to any system built on denial. There is a reason why guilt is the weapon most often used against those who are breaking free. Guilt keeps you compliant. Guilt keeps you doubting yourself. Guilt convinces you that protecting your peace is cruelty. But guilt that demands your suffering is not from God. Conviction brings clarity and growth. Manipulative guilt brings fear and paralysis. Learning to tell the difference is one of the most important spiritual skills you will ever develop. You may have been taught that family is everything, but no one told you that God is the author of family, not its prisoner. When family dynamics contradict God's nature, something must be confronted. God does not align himself with abuse simply because it wears the label of blood. He does not endorse emotional harm simply because it is familiar. And he does not call you to stay bound simply because others are uncomfortable with your freedom. It is deeply unsettling when the people who taught you about love are the same people who resist your healing. This creates internal conflict. You begin to question your discernment. You wonder if you are being ungrateful. You wonder if you are overreacting. But here is something few people say out loud: systems that benefit from your silence will always call your voice a problem. Systems that benefit from your compliance will always call your boundaries rebellion. Systems that benefit from your exhaustion will always call your rest laziness. Spiritual warfare is not always about casting out demons. Sometimes it is about casting off lies. Lies that say you owe access to people who refuse to respect you. Lies that say love means enduring harm. Lies that say you are responsible for other people's emotions. Lies that say God would never ask you to walk away. But the same God who values reconciliation also values truth. And reconciliation without repentance is just prolonged suffering. There is a moment in every healing journey where obedience to God feels like disobedience to family expectations. This is the crossroads. This is where many people turn back, not because God stopped calling, but because the pressure became too heavy. But the pressure is not proof that you are wrong. Often, it is proof that something false is being exposed. What makes this battle so difficult is that it is invisible. There are no bruises to point to. No dramatic evidence. Only a slow erosion of self-worth. A constant feeling of walking on eggshells. A quiet fear of speaking honestly. A sense that you must perform to be loved. These are not small things. They are indicators of a spiritual environment that does not nurture life. When God begins to break familial chains, it often starts internally before it ever becomes external. You begin to detach emotionally before you detach physically. You begin to grieve what you wished the relationship could be. You begin to accept what it is. And this grief is holy. It is not bitterness. It is not rebellion. It is the mourning of an illusion so that truth can finally take its place. Many people stay bound because they confuse forgiveness with access. Forgiveness releases resentment. Access requires trust. Trust requires change. And change cannot be forced. You can forgive someone completely and still recognize that they are not safe to have influence over your life. God does not ask you to submit to what damages you. He asks you to submit to what transforms you. There is a reason why Jesus himself stepped away from his family at times. Not out of hatred, but out of purpose. There is a reason why Scripture speaks about leaving what hinders you. There is a reason why spiritual maturity often creates distance from environments that cannot grow with you. This is not abandonment. This is alignment. When familial toxicity goes unchallenged, it often masquerades as spirituality. Control is called obedience. Silence is called humility. Suffering is called sacrifice. But God's Spirit brings freedom, clarity, and truth. If something consistently steals your peace, confuses your identity, and distances you from God rather than drawing you closer, it deserves to be questioned. One of the most painful parts of this journey is realizing that some people will never understand the version of you that is healed, because they benefited from the version of you that was broken. And when you stop bleeding, they accuse you of changing. They accuse you of becoming distant. They accuse you of being cold. But what they are really reacting to is the loss of control. Spiritual warfare intensifies right before breakthrough. Doubt becomes louder. Loneliness becomes heavier. Old memories resurface. You wonder if it would be easier to go back to who you were. But ease is not the same as peace. Comfort is not the same as calling. And familiarity is not the same as safety. God does not free you to isolate you. He frees you to align you. Sometimes separation is not the end goal, but it is the necessary beginning. Space creates clarity. Distance reveals patterns. Silence exposes manipulation. And in that clarity, God begins to rebuild your identity not as a role, but as a person. You are not selfish for choosing healing. You are not dishonoring God by refusing to tolerate toxicity. You are not weak for feeling the weight of this battle. You are brave for facing it. Because breaking generational chains is rarely celebrated in the moment. It is often lonely. But its impact is eternal. One of the quiet miracles of this process is how your inner world begins to change. The anxiety that once followed family interactions begins to fade. The guilt begins to loosen its grip. Your thoughts become clearer. Your prayers become more honest. You stop asking God to fix everyone else and start asking Him to guide your steps. This is growth. Spiritual warfare does not end with one decision. It unfolds over time. There will be moments of strength and moments of doubt. Moments of peace and moments of grief. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. Healing is not linear. Freedom is not instant. But every step toward truth weakens the chains that once held you. You may never receive the apology you deserve. You may never hear acknowledgement of the harm caused. You may never see accountability from those who hurt you. But your healing does not require their permission. God's authority does not depend on their agreement. This journey changes how you see God. He becomes less of a distant authority and more of a protective presence. You realize that His love does not feel like fear. His guidance does not feel like confusion. His correction does not feel like shame. And you begin to recognize that much of what you thought was God's voice was actually conditioning. Spiritual freedom often requires grieving the family you needed but did not receive. This grief is not ungrateful. It is honest. And honesty is the foundation of healing. You cannot heal what you refuse to name. And you cannot be free while pretending everything is fine. There is a future version of you that lives without constant tension. A version that trusts their instincts. A version that no longer feels responsible for fixing everyone. A version that knows when to speak and when to step back. That version exists because God is not finished with you. He is not calling you into chaos. He is calling you into alignment. You are not crazy for sensing something is wrong. You are not dramatic for needing space. You are not disobedient for choosing peace. You are responding to a divine invitation to step out of survival mode and into purpose. Spiritual warfare ends not when everyone agrees with you, but when you stop fighting against yourself. When you stop abandoning your needs to keep others comfortable. When you stop shrinking to maintain connection. When you choose truth even when it costs you familiarity. God breaks chains not with noise, but with clarity. Not with force, but with truth. And once a chain is broken, it may try to convince you it was never there. But you know. You feel the difference. You breathe differently. You live differently. You pray differently. And if you are in the middle of this battle right now, feeling exhausted, confused, or alone, hear this clearly: you are not behind. You are not failing. You are in transition. And transitions are uncomfortable because they require letting go of what no longer fits. Freedom does not always feel like celebration at first. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes it feels like silence. Sometimes it feels like standing alone. But over time, it becomes peace. It becomes clarity. It becomes strength. And one day, you will look back and realize that what tried to break you became the very thing God used to set you free. You are not cursed. You are not doomed to repeat the past. You are not responsible for carrying what was never yours to hold. The chain ends here. The pattern stops with you. And the freedom you choose today becomes the inheritance for generations you may never meet. You are not just surviving spiritual warfare. You are winning it. And you are free. And even after all of this, even after the awareness, even after the clarity, there will be moments when the old voices try to return. Not always as words, but as feelings. A sudden sense of doubt. A whisper that asks if you went too far. A memory that softens the past just enough to make you question the truth. This is one of the last strategies of bondage, nostalgia without accountability. But remember, healing does not erase good memories, it simply refuses to let them excuse ongoing harm. You may notice that as you grow stronger, the pull to explain yourself grows weaker. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop trying to find the perfect words that will finally make them understand. Because deep down, you realize something freeing and frightening at the same time: understanding was never the issue. Control was. And once you accept that, you stop negotiating with people who benefit from your confusion. Spiritual warfare often reaches its peak when you stop reacting. When accusations no longer hook you. When emotional bait no longer pulls you back into old cycles. When silence becomes a boundary instead of a punishment. This is not coldness. This is regulation. This is wisdom. This is what it looks like when someone chooses peace over proving a point. There is a quiet authority that begins to settle over you. Not arrogance. Not bitterness. But groundedness. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You tolerate less, but with compassion. You see manipulation faster, but you respond slower. This is what happens when God rewires your discernment. You stop confusing chaos with passion and control with care. Some relationships will change forever. Not because you wanted them to, but because they cannot survive without the old version of you. This realization can hurt deeply. It can feel like loss. But loss is not always evidence of failure. Sometimes it is evidence of growth. Dead branches fall so that living ones can flourish. You may grieve not only people, but time. Time spent trying harder. Time spent doubting yourself. Time spent believing that if you just loved better, endured more, stayed quieter, things would change. That grief is valid. But do not let it turn into self-blame. You did what you could with what you knew at the time. Now you know more. And knowing more changes everything. As the chains break, you begin to notice how your body responds to peace. Your shoulders relax. Your breath deepens. Your sleep changes. Your nervous system, once constantly on alert, begins to trust that danger is no longer always present. This is not just emotional healing. This is spiritual restoration reaching into your physical being. You start to redefine what love looks like. Love that listens. Love that respects. Love that does not punish honesty. Love that allows difference without threat. And as your definition of love changes, so does your tolerance for anything that contradicts it. This is not becoming picky. This is becoming aligned. There will be moments when loneliness tries to convince you that freedom was too expensive. When isolation whispers that going back would be easier. But easier does not mean healthier. Silence is better than chaos. Peace is better than performance. And alignment with God is better than approval from people who require your suffering. God does not call you out of toxicity to abandon you. He calls you out to meet you. In the quiet. In the stillness. In the space where you can finally hear His voice without it being drowned out by obligation and fear. And His voice does not shame you. It steadies you. It does not rush you. It reassures you. You begin to see that obedience to God often looks like courage before it looks like comfort. Like saying no when you were trained to say yes. Like stepping back when you were taught to stay. Like trusting Him more than the opinions of those who have always defined you by your usefulness rather than your worth. One day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you will notice that the emotional weight you carried for years is gone. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But quietly. You respond differently. You feel lighter. Situations that once triggered panic now barely register. This is how freedom often arrives. Softly. Steadily. Permanently. And when you reach this place, you will understand that breaking generational chains was never just about you. It was about changing the future. It was about refusing to normalize pain. It was about choosing truth over tradition. It was about answering a divine call that few are brave enough to accept. You are not heartless for protecting your heart. You are not rebellious for choosing healing. You are not ungodly for refusing to carry what God never asked you to hold. You are becoming whole. And wholeness will always disrupt what relied on your brokenness. If no one has told you this yet, hear it now. You are allowed to outgrow environments that taught you to survive instead of live. You are allowed to choose peace even if others choose chaos. You are allowed to walk forward even if others stay stuck. The chains that once defined your family story do not define you. The patterns that once felt inevitable are not permanent. What was modeled to you does not have to be repeated through you. God specializes in interruptions. And your life is one of them. So if you feel tired, rest. If you feel unsure, pause. If you feel lonely, remember that separation is not the same as abandonment. Sometimes it is preparation. Preparation for relationships that are mutual. Preparation for love that is safe. Preparation for a life that feels like freedom rather than obligation. This is not the end of your story. This is the turning point. This is the moment the cycle breaks. This is where spiritual warfare shifts into spiritual victory. And no matter how hard the battle felt, no matter how much it cost, one truth remains unshaken and unchanging: you are free. And even after freedom begins to feel real, there will still be echoes. Not chains, but memories of them. Moments when your mind reaches for old reflexes that no longer serve you. You may catch yourself over-explaining, apologizing for existing, bracing for reactions that never come. This does not mean you are still bound. It means your nervous system is learning a new language. Freedom has an adjustment period. Peace can feel unfamiliar before it feels natural. You start to realize that strength does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes strength is choosing not to respond. Sometimes it is leaving a message unread. Sometimes it is ending a conversation early without justification. Sometimes it is letting someone be disappointed without rushing to fix it. These quiet decisions accumulate, and slowly, the internal battlefield grows silent. You may notice that your prayers change. They become less about survival and more about direction. Less about endurance and more about alignment. You stop asking God to make others different and start asking Him to make you grounded. And in that grounding, you find something powerful. You are no longer easily shaken by moods, opinions, or emotional storms that once ruled you. There is a particular kind of grief that comes when you accept that some people will only ever know the version of you that was available to be used. That grief is sharp, but it is also clarifying. It frees you from trying to earn love from people who do not know how to give it without conditions. It teaches you that love without safety is not love you are meant to carry. As the distance grows, you begin to see patterns with clarity rather than emotion. You recognize how cycles were maintained. How silence was rewarded. How truth was punished. how roles were enforced. And instead of anger, you feel understanding. Not excuse, but comprehension. This understanding does not pull you back. It releases you forward. You also begin to see how deeply courageous this path is. Many people sense dysfunction but never name it. Many feel pain but never confront it. Many know something is wrong but choose comfort over truth. You did not. You chose awareness. You chose growth. You chose to let God dismantle what was familiar so He could build what is healthy. Spiritual warfare shifts at this stage. It is no longer about breaking free, but about staying free. About recognizing when old dynamics try to re-enter with softer edges. About noticing when obligation disguises itself as love. About discerning when nostalgia tries to reopen doors God already closed for your protection. And here is something rarely spoken: not everyone who loses access to you is losing something unjustly. Access is not a right. It is a responsibility. And when people misuse it, distance is not punishment. It is consequence. God is not offended by boundaries that protect what He is healing. You may also notice new relationships entering your life that feel unfamiliar in the best way. Conversations without tension. Disagreements without fear. Connection without control. At first, this may feel suspicious. You might wait for the other shoe to drop. But slowly, your body learns that safety can exist without performance. Your sense of identity deepens. You are no longer defined by how useful you are, how accommodating you are, or how much you can endure. You begin to value presence over approval. Integrity over image. Peace over proximity. This shift is subtle but profound. There will be moments when old voices try to label you as difficult, distant, or unloving. Let them. Labels lose their power when they no longer match your reality. You are not responsible for managing narratives that require your self-betrayal to stay intact. God's work in you is not rushed. He is patient with the layers. With the hesitation. With the setbacks. He does not shame you for missing what once was. He does not pressure you to heal faster than your soul can handle. He walks with you, not ahead of you, not behind you, but beside you. And eventually, you reach a place where you no longer need constant reassurance that you did the right thing. The peace itself becomes the confirmation. Your life feels quieter. Your choices feel clearer. Your faith feels rooted rather than reactive. This is the fruit of freedom. You understand now that breaking familial chains was not an act of destruction, but of creation. You did not tear something down recklessly. You allowed God to remove what could not be redeemed so that something healthier could take its place. If you ever doubt the significance of this journey, remember this: cycles end because someone decides they will. Patterns stop because someone refuses to continue them. And freedom becomes possible because someone believes that God's truth is stronger than inherited fear. You are not walking away from love. You are walking toward wholeness. You are not rejecting family. You are rejecting dysfunction. You are not losing yourself. You are finally meeting who you were always meant to be. And as you continue forward, one step at a time, one choice at a time, let this truth anchor you when the path feels uncertain. What God frees, He sustains. What He heals, He protects. What He calls out, He does not abandon. The war that once raged within you has not only quieted, it has taught you discernment, strength, and compassion without self-sacrifice. And that is how you know this was not just survival. It was victory. And even now, as victory settles in, there is a deeper layer unfolding. You begin to notice that your freedom is not loud. It does not demand applause. It simply exists, steady and unshakable. You are no longer proving that you are healed, you are living as someone who is. The urgency to be understood fades, replaced by a quiet confidence that no longer depends on external validation. You start responding to life rather than bracing for it. Situations that once sent your mind spiraling now pass through you without leaving a mark. Not because you are numb, but because you are anchored. Your nervous system no longer mistakes familiarity for safety. Your spirit no longer confuses endurance with virtue. You have learned that peace is not something you defend aggressively, it is something you protect intentionally. There will be times when others attempt to reconnect with the version of you they remember. They may test boundaries softly at first, with nostalgia, with humor, with selective kindness. This is not always malicious. Sometimes it is confusion. Sometimes it is fear of loss. But you will notice how your body responds. Where there is peace, your body stays open. Where there is manipulation, it tightens. Trust that wisdom. It was hard-earned. You will also notice how your compassion evolves. It becomes cleaner. You can care without rescuing. You can empathize without absorbing. You can love without losing yourself. This is not detachment, this is maturity. You are no longer entangled in emotional labor that was never yours to carry. At times, you may feel a strange sadness for the people who remain stuck in patterns you escaped. Not pity, not superiority, but sorrow. Sorrow for what could have been if healing had been chosen. This sorrow does not pull you backward. It reminds you why freedom matters. It reminds you why cycles must end, even when ending them costs comfort. You begin to see how God uses your journey quietly. Not as a sermon, but as a presence. People feel safer around you without knowing why. Conversations deepen without effort. Your calm becomes contagious. This is not because you have all the answers, but because you no longer need to control outcomes. There may still be moments when old emotions surface unexpectedly. A holiday. A song. A memory. Healing does not erase history, it recontextualizes it. When these moments arise, you do not panic. You acknowledge them. You let them pass. You no longer spiral into self-doubt because you understand that emotion is not regression. It is simply information moving through a healed system. One of the quietest signs of freedom is how your inner dialogue changes. You speak to yourself with patience instead of pressure. You rest without guilt. You make decisions without fear of punishment. You no longer rush to fix discomfort. You allow space. And in that space, clarity continues to grow. You understand now that spiritual warfare was never only about confrontation. It was about consent. Consent to continue suffering. Consent to remain silent. Consent to carry what was never yours. And when you withdrew that consent, the power shifted. Not violently, but definitively. You also realized that God did not rush this process because rushing would have recreated the same harm in a different form. He allowed time for rewiring. For grieving. For relearning. For rebuilding trust with yourself. This patience was not delay. It was precision. There is a future unfolding that no longer revolves around managing dysfunction. A future where your energy is invested in growth, creativity, and connection rather than survival. A future where love does not feel like a test. A future where your faith feels grounded rather than strained. And when you look back, truly look back, you will not only see pain. You will see strength forming quietly in moments you thought were breaking you. You will see discernment sharpened through confusion. You will see courage cultivated through fear. Nothing was wasted. The chain did not just break externally. It dissolved internally. It lost its meaning. Its authority. Its voice. And that is why it cannot return. Because chains only hold power when they are believed. You are no longer defined by the environment that shaped you. You are defined by the truth that freed you. And that truth continues to unfold, deeper and steadier with every step you take. This is not temporary relief. This is transformation. This is not escape. This is alignment. This is not rebellion. This is obedience to a higher calling. And as you continue forward, let the final weight fall away. You do not owe your freedom an explanation. You do not owe your peace a defense. You do not owe your future to the past. The war is over where it matters most. Your spirit is no longer under siege. Your life is no longer dictated by inherited wounds. You are free. And as this journey settles into your bones, you begin to understand something gentle and powerful at the same time. Freedom was never meant to make you hard, it was meant to make you whole. You did not walk through this fire to become distant from love, but to finally recognize what real love feels like. Love that does not demand your silence. Love that does not grow angry when you grow strong. Love that does not confuse control with care. What you gained was not just distance from pain, but closeness to truth. You carry wisdom now that cannot be taught in books or sermons. Wisdom earned through discernment. Wisdom shaped by prayer, tears, and quiet courage. And this wisdom softens you instead of sharpens you. It allows you to move through the world with clarity rather than suspicion, with boundaries rather than walls, with compassion rather than guilt. This is what healing was always meant to produce. If you are listening to this and feel seen, know that this message found you for a reason. Not because you were weak, but because you were ready. Ready to stop questioning your intuition. Ready to stop carrying what was never yours. Ready to believe that God's desire for you is not endurance without end, but peace without fear. Take a moment to breathe this in. Let it settle. Let it reassure the parts of you that still feel cautious. You are not late. You are not broken. You are exactly where healing begins to feel real. And if this message helped you name something you have been carrying silently, let that be confirmation that you are not alone on this path. If this spoke to your heart, if it gave language to something you could feel but never fully explain, I invite you to support this space. Gently press like so this message can reach someone else who may be fighting this same invisible battle in silence. Share it with someone you love, or someone you sense needs reassurance that they are not wrong for choosing peace. And if you want to continue walking this journey of clarity, healing, and spiritual growth together, subscribe to this channel. There are more messages here meant to strengthen you, ground you, and remind you who you are becoming. And as you go, carry this sweet and simple truth with you: healing does not erase your past, it transforms its meaning. What once hurt you now teaches you. What once bound you now guides you. And what once felt like loss has quietly become freedom. Thank you for spending this time here. May you move forward lighter than you arrived, clearer than before, and confident in this truth above all others: the chain has ended, the lesson has been learned, and your future is no longer defined by what tried to hold you back.